Hey guys, what's up? This is Scott with Scott York Fitness. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to look at the Reg Park Journal, but not any Reg Park Journal. This was Steve Reeves' own personal, private copy of the Reg Park Journal. So to give you some history here, Reg Park started publishing with the help of Joe Weider. Joe Weider was a managing editor for the first 4 issues. The first 4 issues were called Mr. Universe. After that, Reg changed the name to Muscleman, and then Reg Park Sr. became the managing editor after that. So somewhere between these two, I'm not sure if Reg and Joe Weider had a falling out or they just decided to go their separate ways. But that's what happened. So there was a name change after the first 4 issues, and the second 4 issues were called Muscleman. This is from 1952. So you can see that I've got some Monopoly money in there. I have 4 kids and we play Monopoly. So I use these to bookmark the 8 different journals to make it much easier to navigate. But let's take a look at the inside of this book. And then we're going to look at a reminder of who Reg Park was, if you're not sure. So this is an autographed copy to Steve Reeves. It says, "To Steve, with the compliments of the director of the Reg Park Barbell Company, Ltd., Leeds, England, Reg Park and Reg Park." He had to sign it twice. Amazing. Right? So Steve Reeves' own personal copy of the Reg Park Journal. Not only are you seeing these bookmarks that I put in here with Monopoly money, but you're also seeing all of these, and guess what? These are bookmarks that Steve Reeves himself had placed in this book. So when I got this book, those were there already. And let's take a look inside and see what Steve might have bookmarked. Before we get into that, I want to show you real quickly who Reg Park was, and maybe you already know that, but maybe it's good to have a refresher. So this issue of Eiferman had a memorial to Reg Park, and let's take a look at that. This is from March 2008, and there again I've got this bookmarked with Monopoly money. So Gene Mosey was the author. And here's Reg Park right here. He was Mr. Universe, Mr. Britain, multiple title holder, and he placed second to Steve Reeves in 1950, and a lot of people thought maybe he should have won. He only lost by half a point or so, I don't quite remember. But Reg Park was the idol of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he was a great businessman, a great bodybuilder, extremely strong, bench press 500 pounds, bench press 400 pounds for reps, squatted I believe 600 pounds, has a son named John Park. So this is what I wanted to show you right here. It says, "When did you start your very popular Reg Park Journal?" And Reg Park says, "I started publishing Mr. Universe in 1952. That's what I just showed you, and we're going to get back to that in a minute. "We changed the name to Muscle Mag, but later I thought that since my name was probably the biggest in Great Britain and Europe, why not capitalize on that and call it a Reg Park Journal? We started the Reg Park Barbell Company and sold weights, courses, health foods, track suits, posing trunks, t-shirts, etc., and we advertised everything in the magazine. When we went to shows, we'd sell back copies for about 1/3 the newsstand price." And then Eiferman says, "That was a good magazine. We used to really like it when we could get our hands on it in Los Angeles." And then Reg says, "The guys who wrote for us were all dyed-in-the-wool enthusiasts, and their comments were very sincere and genuine. There were no trimmings. We wrote it the way we saw it. I received many compliments on it when I came to the 57 Mr. USA contest to guest pose." And so turn the page, here's Steve Reeves and Reg at the 1950 Mr. Universe that Steve won, and a lot of people thought maybe Reg should have won. I saw Steve. The question is, were you and Steve Reeves good friends? Reg says, I saw Steve in Birmingham, England at the 50th anniversary of the Mr. Universe contest. He was looking very impressive. As we stood on stage together, I said to him, Steve, it is always a great pleasure to see you. He replied, Reg, it is equally a pleasure to see you. I always thought he was a very charming person. I think he probably had the most beautiful physique the world has ever seen, and he had the most handsome face the world has ever seen. He made movie stars of that era look like also-rans. One thing about Reg Park is that he was very blunt. So anyway, great issue. I'm glad I had this so I could really expand on who Reg Park was. All right, well, let's get back to this. So here's the autograph once again. And this is the first of 8 issues within this hardbound copy. And so that's Reg Park on the cover. All right, that's when it was still called Mr. Universe. And here we go. So the first actual article is a Steve Reeves article. This is where Steve has put the piece of paper, and it's a calf training article. This is actually Reg Park. I've seen in another magazine recently they have this as being Steve Reeves, but that's Reg Park. It says right here, when amazing Reg Park posed for these photos, staff photographer Lon moved away from his camera, just stood there and looked with sincere admiration. So even though these are Steve over here, that's Reg Park right there. So once again, you know, you can see the colored pieces of paper. This is a great picture here. We've got the 1948 Mr. Universe on your left, and Andre Drapp, if I'm saying his name right, got 3rd place, and John Grimmick got 1st, and Steve got 2nd. You can see that 2nd place Mr. Universe trophy in another one of my videos on this channel. I am the actual owner of that 1948 Mr. Universe runner-up. So in these early issues of what I'm just going to call the Reg Park Journal, you had a lot of Steve Reeves. Of course, you had Reg Park, you had John Grimmick, you had George Eiferman, Clancy Ross, and then once it changed to Muscleman, those guys seemed to disappear. There's also a lot of Doug Hepburn, of course, one of your strongest bench pressers and all-around lifters. And I believe there's even some really good weightlifting articles on John Davis and Tommy Kono as well. So here's another page. I've got the Weiders up here. Juan Ferrero over here, and Ben Weider on your left, and then somebody, this is not Steve's writing, so I'm not sure who would have written that. It would have to have been either his second wife, Aline, or his 3rd relationship, Deborah, or maybe even George Helmer. I'm not really sure. And this book did belong to Steve, and then it went to George, and then Joe Vitale, and now I'm the 3rd owner after Steve. All right, so the next issue, that's Steve Reeves on the cover. That's number 2 out of 8. Still calling it Mr. Universe. This is where Steve has put some colored paper to bookmark that page. He's also got some underlining in here, which I thought was fascinating. Here's Steve's really good friend George Eiferman. George Eiferman and Steve were roommates, workout partners. They traveled together. I think Steve once said that Jack LaLanne and George Eiferman were like his 2 closest friends. Here's the 3rd issue, still called Mr. Universe. Clancy Ross on the cover. Steve placed 2nd to Clancy in the Mr. USA, and John Grimmick placed 1st. Alright, let's move on. So here's some colored paper here, another article on Steve Reeves. And this was written by Earle Liederman, who is a really good writer. I enjoyed, each of these journals has this same column where he'll talk with George Eiferman or Clancy Ross. In this case it's Steve Reeves. He really asks some good questions. He's a really good writer. I have a book on endurance by Earle Liederman that's really good. All Alright, here's the fourth cover. So this was the last cover where the name was Mr. Universe. Let's go back for a minute. If you look here, you see Managing Editor Joe Weider. And then when you look on the last issue, now the Managing Editor is Reg Park Sr. So somewhere in there, the Weider and Reg Park had some sort of change of heart in terms of what they were going to do with this magazine. Okay, so then this is the first issue. This is number 5, but it's the first one called Muscleman. Reg Park on the cover. You can see that his dad, I'm assuming that's his dad, Reg Park Sr. Got some great other writers in here. Earle Liederman, Dennis Winn, Oscar Heidenstam, who Steve traveled to England with in that 1948 Mr. World victory. Alright, let's continue on. Some more paper. So now you can see where things are starting to get underlined. Reeves, 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 Reeves. This was the article that Earle Liederman wrote. Another article, Impressions of Great Bodybuilders I Have Met. And down here, talking about Reg Park, although Reg was beaten that year by Reeves, as we all know, he made quite sure of it the next. Well, that was in 1950 when, that was in 1951 when Reg won Mr. Universe. But in here it's talking about how Reg was describing his first impression of Steve Reeves when he first saw him and how blown away he was. So Steve actually bookmarked that page. We got some more stuff over here. Alright, let's go on. So this is the 6th journal, Juan Ferrero, and it's called Muscleman here. Here's an article, How I Developed My Triceps. Steve's got it bookmarked because he's got a picture of himself here. And you can see those awesome triceps right there. He had really dense triceps. That's something that always stood out to me. And Mr. America 1947 picture right there. And then here is the next journal. So now we're on number 7. There's one more after this. And I thought at this point, the quality, not to take anything away from this cover guy or some of the others, but I don't want to say it dropped off, but you didn't have Clancy Ross, you didn't have Reg Park, you didn't have Steve Reeves on the cover anymore, so now you're learning about some new people. And it seemed like the focus of the journal was more on the British bodybuilders and the stars of tomorrow. There's still a lot of Reg Park, there's a lot of ads which are really entertaining and educational themselves. And then the last one is Steve Reeves. So we had Steve on the cover, and this was the last issue of the 8 within this hardbound copy of the Reg Park Journal. And that's Steve's colored paper right there. Be very careful so I don't rip any of this stuff. So here's a picture of Steve right here, Steve Reeves, whom many consider the greatest of all time. So imagine, you know, you're Steve Reeves, Reg sends you this book because, you know, there's so much respect between those guys, all of them, George Eiferman, Clancy Ross, Reg Park, Steve Reeves. He sends you this in the mail, and it's 1952, there's the date, and you get this, and, you know, you see yourself all in here. Just amazing to me. And there's the first article on Steve Reeves. So the last thing I wanted to touch on is that, and I'm back at the very beginning of the book, and there's one of the writers, consultant editor Charles A. Smith. Well, he's got articles all within the journal here. And in some of my research, Terry Todd and Jan Todd, they have a wonderful newsletter, and those two are based out of Austin, Texas. They work at the Stark Museum, which if you've never been to in Austin, it is filled with all of this stuff related to weightlifting and bodybuilding. When you first walk in, there's a replica of the Farnese Hercules. It's like 8 feet tall, and so it's free to go in once COVID's over and done with. And when I was there with Joe Vitale, we got a personal tour from Terry Todd. He took us into the back and showed us all this amazing stuff, you know, like anvils and dumbbells and all these barbells and huge weights and things that just weren't even out yet for show. But Charles Smith, as I was doing research, he left the iron game, I want to say like in the 50s, and he moved to Austin, Texas. Now he's passed away. It's 2021. I don't remember what year he passed away. It's been a while. But from what I had read, he left the iron game and moved to Austin and became an intake supervisor at an Austin area detention center. Some years later, like 30 years after he left the iron game, must have been around the 1980s sometime, he was pulled back in because he was such a wealth of knowledge. I really wish that, you know, I had known who he was a little bit better and would have been able to meet him. That would have been fantastic. Well, there you go, guys. If you have any questions on this amazing collectible, the Mr. Universe and Muscleman hardbound journal from 1952, feel free to leave a comment. I'd love to hear it. And if you want to see more stuff like this, please make sure you subscribe and hit that little bell notification. That way you'll get an email whenever I upload a new video, because I have a lot more stuff just like this. Alright guys, thanks a lot. Have a nice day.